Now, most Americans might wonder, how did we get here? And I suppose, what legislative strategy has the House Republican caucus devised or developed to avoid a government shutdown? Apparently, that strategy is waste an entire summer debating bills on protecting gas stoves and the like, wait 8 days before government funding runs out, and then bring before this committee and the full House a series of partisan bills that stand no chance of passing in the Senate, much less being signed into law by the president. That's why we're here. I do think context as to why the Rules Committee is meeting this afternoon is important. For those poor souls who may be watching this hearing on C-SPAN and assuming that the House is in fact in session, it's important to disabuse them of that notion. The House is not in session today. Why is the House not in session? Because the Speaker sent everyone home for the weekend, 7 days before the government is slated to shut down. I'll seek unanimous consent a little bit later in my remarks to enter into the record an article from Politico this morning. I was reading the headline, "More House rule votes have failed this week than in the past 2 decades." Just think about that. More House rules have failed in the last 5 days than in the last 20 years in the House of Representatives. That is House Republican control. Dysfunction. I do think the American people deserve answers as to why the Republican caucus has decided to engineer a government shutdown. And so, Mr. Joyce, Chairman Joyce, and I know you to be a reasonable member, and certainly by reputation, and you have a great working relationship, I understand, with my colleague from Texas, Mr. Cuellar, your ranking member on your subcommittee. Well, let me take a step back. I take it you would describe the situation on our southern border as urgent?
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't think you'd be alone in that view. When did the Homeland Security Subcommittee hold hearings on this bill that we're considering today? My understanding is you held a lot of hearings.
Right, and I believe we passed it in the full committee in July.
You passed it, would June 21st of this year sound about right? That the full committee marked up your bill?
I'll defer to you, sir, if you have the date there. I know that I've been working on it since the day I was appointed as chairman with my dear friend Henry Cuellar to try to find better ways to make implement a strategy to contain what's happening at the border, because it's a national shame.
And I, for one, want to say I appreciate your commitment. The question I have is, why has it taken 100 days for the Homeland Security Subcommittee and the full Appropriations Committee to bring this bill to the Rules Committee, if the situation on the southern border is as urgent as you and I both believe it is?
Well, I certainly agree that if I was running this place, I prioritize things perhaps in a different way. But
aren't you running the place? Who is in charge?
Well,
do I talk to the Republican whip? Do I talk to Speaker McCarthy? Who do I ask this question of?
Well, the appropriations process normally takes place we have our field hearings throughout the first 6 months of the year.
Sure.
July, generally, as we have processed 10 of our 12 bills. The other 2 should get done shortly.
You did your work. June 21st, you marked up the bill. June 21st was 100 days ago.
Correct.
That's all I'm trying to ask is, what happened in this intervening 100 days? Why didn't we take up this bill last month? Or maybe in July? I don't understand.
I've been ready to go on June 22nd, sir, but I don't dictate the schedule.
Do you understand why the American people would be frustrated as they see a Republican caucus that purports and states that the situation on our southern border is urgent, but waits 100 days to bring a Homeland Security funding bill to the House floor? Would that make sense to you?
May I respond, sir?
Yeah, of course, yes, sir.
Because I think the American people are completely frustrated because, if you look at it, I remember, I think it was my dear friend Mario Diaz-Balart, who had presidents of the countries he's talked about before, who came here in 14 and 15, who said, we want our children. We want them to stay home. We wish the president at that time, President Obama, would say, you're not welcome here. And when he did that, when he started deporting people and pushing back on the entry, guess what? The numbers went down, and they stayed down. But this administration, from day one, has said there's a green light here. Please come. Now talking about giving Venezuelans cards in which they can work in this country and stay in this country, and they don't care whether or not these people are coming across the border. You can't call what's happening down there Christian. You cannot call it humane. The journey these people are taking to come to freedom is not fair to anyone, and the American people are having to pay for it.
And I can tell your passion. And again, as I said, Mr. Joyce, Mr. Chairman, I understand your passion, I understand your commitment, and I understand that your subcommittee did its job working with Mr. Cuellar, holding a series of hearings earlier this year, and the Appropriations Committee. I have substantive disagreements which we'll go through with respect to this particular bill, but the committee marked up the bill. And my point that I'm simply trying to better understand, I suppose, or the question that I am trying to reconcile in my mind is why the House Republican majority decided to spend the summer on bills regarding gas stoves and the lesser prairie chicken, and then send everyone home for a 47-day recess, only to come back and 7 days before the government is slated to shut down and troops and Border Patrol agents are slated to not receive paychecks, decide that now they'd like to bring this bill to the floor. That is my point, your answer in the very beginning was a candid one, that I should talk to who's running the place, and that clearly is the Speaker and the Republican leadership. So I suppose, I don't know that they testify in front of this committee, so maybe I'll be waiting, and the American people will be waiting on an answer.